Greetings, friends of the apocalypse. This is Jared the Apocalypse Nerd Wallace joining you for Podcast Act Round Zero, episode 21. What are we calling episode 21?
Blackjack!
Uh,
Blackjack!
Apocalypse Reality TV. Wow, great if I did my homework and knew what I was talking about.
Yes, if you'd only picked out a title in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Like if I hadn't just posted it all over the place. So, yes. As to show you, apparently I do not pay attention. So
that does not speak well of your ability to survive in the apocalypse, sir.
You know what? I'm not 15 anymore, so I've slowly assessed that over time that my chances got slimmer and slimmer and slimmer over the years.
You'll be taking that advice that we'll be bringing up later in the episode.
Absolutely. So again, Podcast Act Round Zero, episode 21, Apocalypse Reality TV. So again, myself, Jared the Apocalypse Nerd Wallace, and again he can't talk, and Adam. Fill in the nickname Glancy.
All right, Adam Bomb Glancy. That's what we're going. Because I'm the bomb, bitches.
You are the bomb, yes.
I'm so sorry I said that out loud.
Well, now you're stuck.
That was such a terrible idea.
It is all you now, my friend.
Oh my God.
So what we're gonna talk about is all these, quote unquote reality TV shows, these apocalyptic shows, like The Colony, Apocalypse Man, Doomsday Preppers, things like that, where it's like real people in real situations or things that are faux situations,
real people in stage situations.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen all over the internet people talking about, it's like, was The Colony fake? And it's like...
What do you mean, was it fake? It's a fucking TV show.
Well, no, I mean, they're surviving, and we'll get it. Yeah, we'll get into how I feel, how contrived it is, and how conveniently the skill sets of the people that they've strung together. Because I know a random 10 people are going to have just the perfect skill sets to do what they need to do. They're not going to be, the overweight... gaming, office worker like me, not 9 out of 10 of them are going to be that, right? But 8.
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly. My skill set. Let me get this straight. You used to work as a prosecutor, which means law school, and
you write stories. You're perfect for, I don't know.
I'm perfect for lifting and moving cinder blocks. That's about it. I mean, I'm perfect for some really top-end manual labor until my 40-year-old body just falls apart like, a fucking, like a poorly constructed scarecrow,
Yep.
But, they'll be making that decision about whether or not Glancy's doing enough work to earn his calories for the day.
Yeah, but they do bring up good. Well, I mean, despite the contrivedness of these shows, they do bring up some good points. But we'll get into that here in a second. But I've been slacking on the whole in the news category of late. Again, I haven't really run across anything that's stellar that I even think's worth mentioning. Have you come across anything, or?
Well, except for the continuing, the Russians horsing around in the Crimea, like where it's, partying like it's 1991 and the Soviet Union is back.
No, I'm not talking about reality. I want fantasy. I want.
Oh, okay.
I heard. Speaking of that, I heard on the radio this morning. This comedian, or actually, who they were playing a clip. Maybe it might have been from Jimmy Fallon or something. Yeah. Like they asked the Russians, they're like, 10,000 Russian soldiers showed up outside the border, and they're like, well, it's why are you here? Training exercises. Well, what are you training for? To invade, Chechnya. To invade Chechnya,
Yeah, to take your country. Oh, did we say that? Oh, it's a giveaway. Oh, what a giveaway.
So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I can totally see that. My thing about this, the current thing we're seeing is that at least Vladimir Putin has learned the lesson of Saddam Hussein. If you're gonna steal some country away from people, make sure you have nukes, because then if you got nukes, all you gotta do is put up with the economic sanctions and the political sanctions and the if you can, in the political, diplomatic fallout, if you can weather that, you can take any fucking thing you want.
Yeah, you got the chutzpah to back it up,
Yeah. Yeah, and I gotta say, it's just like that. He's definitely learned that lesson. Certainly, that's the lesson that North Korea learned and has been desperately trying to get a nuke, so that they can. Although, frankly, one wonders how much crazier North Korea is going to be once they have nukes. Because right now, they do so much crazy bullshit that it's hard to imagine them being worse. But I guess I shouldn't say that where North Korea is concerned.
Oh, dude, they're fucking batshit crazy, and it's like, and they don't have what it takes to back up the craziness. Once they have what they need to back up the crazy, yeah.
Yeah, I love the fact. My favorite North Korean thing is when they attempted to open relations with Japan and get better relations with Japan. Their first move was to say, hey, we just thought we'd like to mention that for several decades now we've been sending submarines to your coastline and having commandos kidnap random people walking on the beach and take them back to North Korea and force them to teach Korean, secret agents how to pass for Japanese. So we just thought we'd let you know about that, as a way of warming up our relationship. The Japanese had no idea this was happening. They just had missing persons reports, and the Japs were like, well, if you've got these people, can we talk to them? No. Well, can their families talk to them? No. So how is this making our relations better? We're opening up. We're being more, open with each other, and we're just telling you that we routinely kidnap your citizens. Are you going to stop? No. What the fuck? Holy shit.
There's something wrong with those people. Yeah. It's like here we were back, when we were in high school. We thought the Russians were going to be the real problem. It's the Pacific Rim that is the problem.
Well, they seem to keep all the best crazy out there. That's for goddamn sure. Anyway, so I don't have much in the way of post-apocalyptic news, except I am playing the hell out of State of Decay Breakdown.
I haven't got back to it because I keep on you know what I got hooked on last month? What did they have last week was the free Civilization download.
Oh, yeah, I skipped that because I wanted to have a life. I knew that if I downloaded Civilization, done.
Yeah, I've been kind of sucked into that a lot. It's like, oh, I want to build resources. I need to build more science. Oh, I want to have this kind of victory. It's like I want to build tanks so I can just run over your armies.
Oh, and you know what I noticed? There's post-apocalyptic scenarios for Civilization Revolutions. Because remember, for $1.25 or $1 whatever, you can buy these maps and these sort of. The game is now selling you piecemeal maps and scenarios. Like, it's even selling you like the wonders of the world. Like, you don't get all the wonders of the world unless you spend another $1.25 to get half dozen more. Which is a little cheap, but all right. But the point is, they have.
Yeah, it's incremental. Oh yeah, I downloaded the free game. There's a couple of downloadable content free that I downloaded, and that was it. I was happy. It's like, well, it's a free game. So, but now that you've told me there's something apocalyptic, I might have to spend money.
Yeah, they're like for $1.25 or $3.40. It's somewhere in that range. You can get a pack that provides an apocalyptic world. That is to say, one where there's either like global warming or some sort of catastrophic climate change, which means resources are really scarce, and there's like tons of extra barbarians, crawling around the landscape, wrecking what you're trying to build. It also, I only read about what there was on Xbox Live, but take a look. It almost sounded like a little bit like Lifeline from State of Decay, where like you start with stuff. And because things are screwed up, your situation gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because the game's all about resource management anyway.
Yeah. So this is. It sounds like they've really dialed up the scarcity and increased the chaos. Maybe even throwing in other natural disasters that happened during the game. But it was the one I remember. Oh, that was it. There was a global warming scenario with rising seas, and then there's an ice age scenario where you're being pushed further and further south.
Oh. All right, yeah, like I haven't been wasting enough time with that, so I'm gonna have to.
No,
You know,
no, but at least this time it'll be appropriate because it'll be apocalyptic.
there you go. See, so we had something apocalyptic. I recently saw something about Snowpiercer, the one about the
Ah,
train
yes.
that runs around the world. Like it's
I'm still not 100% sure about Apocalypse on a Train.
oh, well, but gonna have to see it just for the fact that you're gonna have to see it.
Yeah.
Like the Colony movie.
Yes. Yeah.
I had to see it just because I had to see it. And it wasn't terrible. Like I said,
Much like Zardoz.
oh yeah. So I think we're supposed to be get released like in June. I think it's finally coming to a head this summer. And then there was something I read on briefly on Gizmondo about the whole Chernobyl area, about something with like because of the radiation, and it did something to like the bacteria that like all the dead forests 30 years later are not, or almost 30 years later, are not decaying because it did something to it. So there's
Well, if it killed off the bacteria, it's like irradiated fruit. There's nothing to break down the radiation would mean there's nothing to break down the dead, which is interesting because that means that in a fallout nuclear environment, your corpses are going to hang out a lot longer.
Yeah, which will lead to the zombie apocalypse. See, it all like works. It all ties in together.
Comes together perfectly like a pair of cogs.
There you go. So yeah, it was just a brief little thing they were talking about that, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, all right, well,
we should also mention we're also going to throw in. We don't just have some of the wonky reality or documentary apocalypses, but there's also things like life after people.
Yeah. Oh well, if yeah. Well, you said we weren't necessarily going to hit that one because that was a little bit different. That wasn't quite the.
I think I was wrong because it's documentary style apocalypse.
Wait, what?
Mark your calendar.
No, what?
Mark your calendar. This is a special day. I might have been wrong.
Oh, well, it's on videotape and it's out there, so
it's on the web, documented. All right, just saying, on this date.
We could definitely talk about that too, because I loved that series. I think it was fantastic.
March 17th, 2014, Monday, 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard, 9:15 Eastern Standard. Scott Clancy said he might be wrong.
He might be wrong.
Might be.
Might be. We have not confirmed whether he's wrong or not, but he might be.
But let's go ahead with. Why don't we just start with Life After People? Now that we've gotten onto that,
Okay. Well, Life After People was on the History Channel, and it started with like a 2-hour special, which eventually turned into two seasons. Now, that originally came out like 2000. I don't remember, but can you look that up real quick?
I'm making that happen. You just go right ahead.
Because I remember that came out after there was a book that came out called "The World Without Us."
Yes.
By again, good thing we got Wikipedia here because
I'll make it happen.
Because we're always so prepared. Well, it was Alan Wiseman. He wrote this book called The World Without Us. I mean, it wasn't the greatest book, but it was a start of one of those books that came out in 2007. It was talking about, if man disappeared from the earth, how would the world reclaim itself, and how would nature act? Now, he.
I just wanted to say that Life After People was January 21, 2008 for the pilot, and then 2 seasons through March 16th, 2010.
Okay, wow, that was years ago already. Fuck, time flies. So yeah, those came out after The World Without Us came out, and I think that probably prompted, because a lot of the book he talked about real world stuff like, okay, this city's been abandoned for this long, this island has been abandoned for that long, and he used it to he talked about like there's this forest, ancient forest in Poland, near Poland, that was like just overgrow, any attempt to, establish any kind of living situation there, it overgrows it. So I mean, it was fairly interesting, but it didn't quite get into it as much as I would have liked to, like the possibilities. Okay, what's going to happen afterwards? Now, Life After People picked that up and ran with it. They basically said, okay, man disappears from the Earth, and this is how long.
Oh, I found it. It's the Białowieża Forest.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Białowieża Forest in Poland. He also hit things like, which I'm very amused by. He hit the Korean demilitarized zone to show what a place looks like when people just don't go in it. You know,
And
for decades.
there was like some island in the Mediterranean as well that he spoke about.
That wasn't the Kingman Reef, was it? Or the Palmyra Atoll?
I'm not sure. It was like there's a city there, like this, with hotels.
Varusha, Cyprus. The
Yeah.
place on Cyprus.
Yep.
It was the center of all the fighting, and now it's part of the DMZ between the Turkish and Greek parts of, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he talks about that, and they actually refer to it in, I think, Life After People as well, if I remember correctly. So it's been a number of years since I watched it. But it, takes man out of the equation and to show, like, what would happen. How long would it take for, the plant life to grow, for, items to decay, for bridges to collapse, for buildings to collapse, and glass, and earthquakes, and animals, and it goes into the whole scenario, and it takes it not just in a global scale, but they do it like in like different areas of the world. Like here's Paris, this will happen in Paris, or New York, and then they also talk about on different shows. They focus on different items. It's not always the same thing. Like, hey, this is what happens in New York. They talk about the wildlife and dogs and what would happen to domestic animals and herded animals. Like for milk cows, and I mean it covers everything. Like if man was taken out of the equation, what would, because it wasn't just like, okay, in a 100 years this is what it'll look like. They do cover a lot of that, and they go pretty far into the future.
Yeah, they go a couple of 1,000 years until
millennium, few
yeah,
millennium.
till the Hoover Dam is collapsing. The one that really got me was the thing about the Golden Gate Bridge rusting because on all that salt air because nobody's painting it.
Oh, they're constantly painting that bridge every single day.
Yeah, and that there's this system of sealing it against the elements that goes on constantly that requires an army of workers, and if we stop maintaining our stuff, it starts collapsing pretty quick.
Oh yeah, they made that very evident, especially like the New York City subway. I think they said within 2 or 3 days. The systems would the pumps, the system would fail, and within 2 or 3 days it would be flooded because they constantly have pumps getting water out of there. And once the power dies and everything and the systems break down, those subways would be flooded. They'd be underground rivers like that.
Yeah, and I thought that was just the idea that our civilization requires not just all this power, but it also requires all this meat. It requires all this us. To constantly keep it in motion, constantly keep it under maintenance and repair.
That's civilization, baby. If we don't maintain it, it doesn't maintain us. Unfortunately, it will collapse everything. Yeah, like the Golden Gate Bridge, the dams. I think they said that like the dams were like, oh well, it's pretty much maintenance free, but after a while, it would
Oh, it was the shellfish. It was those freshwater clams or barnacles that will clog the spillways until the level in the lake overtops the dam, and at that point it'll start eroding the dam from the top up. That amount of water will eventually pull the dam down from the top.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. I mean, they cover different major topics. Like I said, one was like domesticated animals, livestock animals. It covers a lot, so it was pretty good. I mean, they did 2 seasons. I enjoyed it. I watched it every week. It was on. I got him. I have him on the shelf. I could. It's in the other room though. I'd have to grab it. But yeah, no. Life After People is good. There's a way they talked about the decay because again, being fans of the apocalypse, it's interesting to see how things would really collapse because the infrastructure would be gone if it was a global level event. Most of the infrastructure would collapse, and these things would rapidly start falling apart. And you don't really see that a lot in all these post-apocalyptic things, but it's like, no, a lot of the shit within like,
Weeks.
weeks, things would start going within a couple of years. A lot of this stuff is just gone. Bridges will be collapsing.
Just because we're gone, not because something fell out of the sky and killed us all. Shit, it's going to start falling apart even if all the power got turned off in all of our houses, so we don't have shorts on the grid, and power burnouts and fires that'll happen because there's nobody maintaining the power flow. If everybody turned their lights off, and turned off the water and the taps, and then just disappeared, the artifacts we've left behind start disintegrating, being consumed by the environment pretty quickly. I was gonna, oh shoot, I was gonna say something really brilliant and pithy and interesting, but clearly it fell out of my head. So I'll interrupt you later.
Sure. But it's interesting because it's not just they said, oh, okay, if man disappeared, which is not realistic, but if there was like a global pandemic when the populations get reduced to small numbers, and guess what,
to Chuck Heston levels.
Yeah,
that's how the epidemic is out of control, is when your population's been reduced to Chuck Heston levels.
I thought when you started saying I thought you were going to say Chuck E. Cheese levels. I don't know why.
What other Chuck is there? There is only.
There's Chuck Heston and there's Chuck E. Cheese. That's it.
There might also be Chuck Bronson.
Yes.
All right.
Well, I thought about Chuck E. Cheese because apparently they're buying Dave and Buster's. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but there you go. Apparently Chuck E. Cheese is going into the Dave and Buster's business.
Clearly, this is the first step towards the apocalypse.
I think they said, what was the joke? It was they're buying it for like $1 billion, or they're like 10 million or 10 trillion, skee ball tickets or something like that. I don't remember.
All right, so life after people and world without people will definitely fall into, I guess, the documentary style, post-apocalypse.
Yeah.
And from after documentaries, the next step down is reality TV.
Yes, lovely reality TV.
Yeah, the part where producers.
The colony. I got these cheap, by the way, so don't.
As if that excuses your behavior, sir.
Well, but it made it easier.
It made your bad behavior easier. Okay.
Yes, it enabled me.
All right, fair enough. So, anyways, you'd seen this before, right?
Oh yeah, I was watching the first season when it first aired back in 2010, which again, it was like, wow, that was a long time ago. So then it came out with the second season. Was it the very next year? I think. Yeah, the very next year. I recently had a catch up and watch this one, and it's been a while since I watched this one, but I know you've watched that one.
Yeah.
So the colony is. Okay, it's an experiment in social psychology. Okay, it's they take a group of people, they put them into this apocalyptic scenario for like 50 days. They drop them in there, and because they could really get their head around that they're in an apocalyptic situation when they're wearing microphones and there's guys and cameras following them around.
Yeah, that immediately makes you feel like the world has ended.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
why am I immediately reminded of Dead Set?
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah. Dead Set was the British-made zombie apocalypse set on the set of Big Brother. Like they're filming Big Brother,
and it all goes down.
The zombie apocalypse, everyone outside the fucking show is turned into a flesh-eating zombie, and the only people left are the people who are on this goddamn TV show.
And most of them don't have a fucking brain cell. They don't have like 3 brain cells between all of them.
Yeah. People are. Some people are still worried about, am I coming off popular?
There's nobody watching.
Yeah. Or it's the same old zombies. Mm-hmm.
Well, nothing's changed. But there you go.
Right.
So it's reality. They put him in this the first season. They put him in this situation. They go, okay, here's the apocalypse happened. You're in this scenario. Go. Now
they direct them though to a space that they've set up for them.
Yeah, they did like some kind of like movie set where But it's like large. It's like a 10-acre area. I mean, it's fairly sizable, so they can kind of go around. They put them in the situation they got to survive, and survive on whatever they have. Now, one of my first problems with it was the 10 volunteers they had. It was a convenient piecing together of skill sets.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look, here's a general contractor. Oh, here's an inventor. Oh, here's a this. Oh, and they all have these perfect
Here's
skill
a
sets.
doctor, a nurse, a contractor, a mechanic, a machinist, a handyman, aerospace engineer, a mechanical engineer, a computer sciences engineer. It's like, well, God, if my fucking survival group is made up of those guys, we're hooray! We've won,
Martial artist instructor. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And again, guess what? You're not going to pull that kind of group together at random in a real apocalypse. I'm sorry. You might get one or two of those types of people, but your average people, no.
One of my favorite things about State of Decay is that when you pick up survivors, they have this list of skills. And you're like, can I join your group? And you're like, sure, but before you really say yes, you don't get any chance to check what their skill set is. But after you say yes, they join the group. You end up with guys who have 1 point of cardio and 1 point of fighting and 10 points of game show quiz answers. And you're like, really? We recruited the guy who knows every answer on Jeopardy? Fuck. No cooking, no engineering, no fighting. Yeah. Well, there is an achievement you can get for taking a character and running into a mob of zombies with a hand grenade and blowing yourself up. So I think the guy with the game show answers just nominated himself for that mission.
What? You win. So it's this perfect set of characters. Now, during the show, they keep on having these experts pop in. Apocalyptic situation. The psychology of the people break down, and like they have like a psychologist expert. They have this one guy with the ball guy, who was like the national security expert guy. They have all these different experts talk about, well, in this kind of scenario, when disaster happens.
Yeah, they had an engineer, a psychotherapist, and a homeland security advisor. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're interjecting, talk about the scenarios. Now, I mean, it is interesting to see, but again, a lot of it's so contrived, and there's
and they don't really tell me anything really deep. You know what I mean? These experts come on and say, here's some fluff that can apply to any situation.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it was interesting to see, like some of the things that they could come up with the little things they have. I mean, like the biggest thing.
That is where the show really won, right? When they got on mission, and they had to make something out of nothing, and they take a bunch of nothing, and then they got something out of it. That's where the show suddenly became riveting.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, despite it's all contrived and they got to do these things, but at least it shows that, wow, look what you can do with scavenging, and look what you can do with what's around you. Now, mind you got to have people with these fucking skill sets, on top of it.
Yeah.
Like the biggest thing, the coolest thing I thought they did, and we've talked about this before, is the wood gas stove.
The wood gas, what do you call it, extractor?
Yeah, to like
the wood gas extraction system. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the best thing. So they made fuel, wood gas.
Or wood gasifier. And the system they used is but simple.
Yep. But you would have had to known how to do that. And they had all these engineers and all these people. Like I think I read something about so it's like, again, it's not really reality, but it's interesting to see what you get the right heads together, what you could come up with, and the whole thing's about them getting food and eventually getting out, to get out of there,
repairing a truck, repairing some vehicles so they can leave.
Yeah. And during the time, they keep on interjecting with how it's like, during the course of the thing, eventually the people's heads kind of get in it to where, they're not seeing the cameras and they're just really just involved in what they're doing and they're kind of lost in it. I mean, I could see that with some of the people kind of really get lost in it, but not overall. Now, here was my biggest problem with the show, because again, it's a game show, and yes, I understand it, but again, this is America, okay? And if they're surviving in the apocalypse, there will be weapons, there will be firearms. There are so many firearms just laying around in this country
Yeah.
The fact that they're unarmed was such an unrealistic part of the scenario. But again, I
Yeah.
understand they have to have it for the show.
Yeah. Yeah. They can't. They can't carry the liability for that.
No, absolutely not. Maybe, but it was so unrealistic. But they had some traders come in who were armed, and I was like, okay, see, that's what you'd be seeing. People coming in, armed escort. People with some firearms. And then they try to mix it up with the characters a lot with, oh look, they give it like the group like a week to kind of start to kind of congeal and get their heads together. Then they kept on throwing things in the mix to shock them and mix them up. Like, oh look, here's some new people they add to the group, or look, now here's some strangers who are attacking you and want your stuff. They kept on like trying to throw them off,
Yeah, yeah, and the thing and some of that typical reality show drama where Joe doesn't like Frank and Frank doesn't like Joe and everybody has to talk tough to each other, and that part became absolutely toxic for me.
Oh yeah.
The show.
Because what was the one guy's name? Our favorite.
Yeah, our favorite guy is Mike. Mike, who was very handy, being a former handyman, but had such a gigantic inferiority complex about all the people around him who had fucking degrees, PhDs, masters in electrical engineering or whatever. He's always these talky, thinky people with their knowing things. They don't know how to do things like a man. And he it's like pouring salt in my eyes every episode when he turned up. And again, the tough talk drove me crazy because what are you really going to do? You're on a fucking game show. You're going to start swinging and get thrown off the show? Please, be my guest.
Oh yeah, he was just so...
You're not going to prove how tough you are by talking a bunch of smack. Just do your job. The guy was brilliant when he did his job, when he could make things happen.
Yeah.
Because he's the guy who made the electrical system happen. He's the guy who adapted a lawnmower, an edger, to be a generator system, to run an alternator, to get the batteries repowered. Did that stuff? Brilliant. Starts talking about you better not mess with me. Oh my God. You know what I keep thinking of? I keep thinking of that Kane and Peele skit.
Oh yeah, that was brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Where I'm at day 173. I'm the last man on Earth. If only I could find somebody else. And sure enough, he finds somebody, and within 30 seconds of meeting him, he shoots him.
Yeah.
Because you can tell right off the bat, this relationship isn't going to work out. Just not going to work out. Go back to the day 174. I'm the last man on Earth. There are some folks who would have gotten shot or shivved if they brought that attitude to a real crisis situation, making the crisis even worse.
Exactly. They're too friendly, and they didn't make enough when it came to weapons. Instead, it's like, oh, I know it would have been like, okay, well, you know what? We need to make some spears. We need to make some.
Clubs, tools, bows and arrows. Find some truck springs. Make a crossbow. Yeah.
Exactly. But again, they're not supposed to make weapons because there's going to be other people. I guess they probably couldn't do stuff like that, which again, not realistic. So.
Yeah. Well, they find some shotgun shells at one point and dismantle them for the gunpowder to make some fireworks. And all I could think of is it's a shotgun shell. It doesn't require any
zip gun
rifling. Why don't you make a shotgun zip gun? I see no reason why that couldn't work. That would be, especially for shotgun shells. I mean, I get why. Again, a zip gun is the exact next answer. You make yourself a zip gun.
Yeah, exactly. Here's my tube. Here's my handle. Here's where I make the impact. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, the thing that made the show watchable was anytime everyone gets together and starts being competent.
Yeah, they started making cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, hell, they made a goddamn surveillance balloon with a camera on it. Remember that shit?
Yeah, just to see the area.
They built trash bags full of helium. Now I'm trying to remember. That was the aerospace engineer. And I'm like, seeing that, I'm like, oh my God, you've got a surveillance building, and you can look around the neighborhood now at this. Holy shit. Then later in some other part, she's like drawing pictures on the walls of I'm drawing our story on the walls, and I'm like, what are we, cavemen already? You've given up, and we've just gone back to scratching out Neolithic.
Oh yeah, we want to leave our story. It's like, oh God.
No, get to work. Get back to work. That just drove me crazy. I mean, on the other hand, there was that thing where she salvaged the record player, and I get that you need things like that to break up the ennui and the monotony. Yeah. There's some of that, but I'll tell you what, the thing that would have broken up the ennui that they couldn't have happen on the show, yes, that would correct, sir. At least I think if you were suggesting that there would be a great deal of mating going on, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what would have broken up the ennui, because that's what breaks up the ennui in human civilization pretty much since there were humans,
So dirty. So there would have been a lot of dirty, unwashed, unprotected sex.
Yeah,
there would have been so bad.
Yes, there would have. But again, it's a game show, so that's not going to happen.
Oh no. But so that was season 1. Season 2, they set them up in a different scenario. It wasn't just like, okay, you're in the apocalypse. They tried to make it seem.
Yeah, the first one's very vague.
Yeah. Okay, here's the apocalypse. They set them up when there was a global pandemic happening, and there was it VORPA, I think was the organization, for the health organization. These people, to protect them, they were in quarantine. They were all separated, quarantined for 3 days, and then they were taken upon a helicopter, and they brought them somewhere. For like, here, we're gonna put you in this area, this for now, and then we're gonna come and get you. We're gonna get you to more permanent civilizations. This is like our staging area. What they used was like a 10-acre lot in Louisiana by the bayou, areas that were totally, neighborhoods that were abandoned and destroyed by Katrina.
Yeah. I don't know what VOPA stood for. It was like Viral Outbreak Protection Agency or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
But yeah, we're gonna keep you here since you've passed quarantine. Just stay here and don't get sick, and we'll be back for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. No, I don't see it on.
I didn't see anything that gave me it. But the point is that they dropped these guys, in an actual apocalypse.
The nuclear flu. So so they so it's in Louisiana. So it's like this 10-acre area. So it's pretty desolate, and they put them in this situation like the flu. So they quarantine them, and they're scrounging. They're trying to find their compound is pretty big. Whereas, okay, to make a distinction, the first one, they had a house, small lot, with a fence around it for protection.
Well, it was an old factory of some sort. It was a factory complex.
Yeah, and they had a big fence around it. They had a pretty big area of like several buildings, several houses, and there was a fence that was very loose security. So it was too big of an area. It was too big of an area to protect. Number one, and that came through in the show because they kept on just. Because they keep on throwing obstacles at him, but again, they have the cavalcade of people here. Let's see, except for a professional model,
yeah,
carpenter, mechanic, retired building contractor, geology professor, construction foreman, and an industrial artist, an architect. So again, a pretty good skill set, except they think this time they go, well, we'll throw in a model because she won't know anything,
Yeah, well, she was like the youngest person on the damn show too.
Yeah, and they had the retired contractor was 70.
Yeah.
And he was kicking it pretty good. I'll give him that, man. He was good. He was going pretty good. But this one, I think, worked a little better because they really showed more about because there's definitely the food deprivation. Food deprivation was a big thing on this one. How they're saying how food affects you, and the bonding. They did the same thing. They brought in a second wave of people. Because the thing is, they were talking about how they kept on focusing on food, and they were not focusing on their own security because they kept on getting screwed with. So the directors kept on throwing groups of people, raiding them, demanding food, because they didn't really concentrate on their security at all,
Yeah.
And they did their normal set of things, like they built a windmill for power, they did alternators, they did a lot of the other stuff the other people did, but they did a lot of other cool stuff. Like a guy built a forge to forge metal. So they did a lot of cool things in the show, the interactions, but they definitely messed with them a lot more. They kidnapped one of the people during this. Later in one of the later episodes, had him ransom for food. And, they kind of showed a bit of a breakdown, and it still had its normal amount of drama because it's on a TV show. But overall, like I said, it was just like, okay.
I got to give them credit for one thing, though, because I only saw it until the second episode, and I got to throw this out. The fucking pigs.
Yes.
When they are given, we're starving and food short, and what do the directors give them? Like 4 rotten hog carcasses.
Yep.
And it's like, really, fuck you, producers. You gave us fucking rotten hog carcasses? Fuck you. And no, these people, when life gives you rotten hog carcasses, you make fucking diesel fuel.
Yep.
They rendered the hog carcasses for fat and used it to run a diesel engine. That gave me wood. I was so thrilled to see them do. I could have thought of the wood gas thing. I could have fiddled around with it for far longer than they did before I figured out how to make it work. But I had a clue because I knew that such a thing existed. It was completely outside of my experience to think hog fat, diesel fuel. I mean, a friend of mine has been running his car on grease trap grease, right, for years. Gwen Callahan's brother actually does that, Jared. And
does he really?
Yes, he did. For the longest time. He may not do it anymore, but for like 5 or 6 years. He'd come out to the airport and pick them up for the HPL Film Festival, and Glenn said the car would smell like, an Indian restaurant, because he'd go around the Indian restaurants and pick up some of the fat, because they use ghee, which is a kind of butter, for their cooking, and it ran really well. And so I would not have been able to make the leap from solid fat in a hog carcass equals grease I can use
to run a diesel. And it has to be a diesel engine, because diesel engines are designed to run on a variety of oils and gases.
Remember, kids, when you're planning for the
Diesel.
apocalypse, if you're not planning for diesel, you're doomed. You've already lost. It's got to be diesel, or you're in deep shit.
And there's less and less of them around than there used to be.
Yeah.
There used to be more, I think. But
that was always the thing about going down to. If you wanted to drive into Mexico, do not take a car that runs on unleaded. There's no such thing as unleaded gas. You want to cross the border and drive all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, you've got to take something that runs on Farben gasolina, because there's diesel south of the border, all the way down to the tip of the Andes, but there's no unleaded. Your access to unleaded gas is
far and few between.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of creative things, like they made a windmill, because first they started, an old truck with an alternator for power. Then they built a windmill, but the thing is, they kept on getting screwed with because they had no security. They're like, we're gonna build the tower, and it was like, they burnt the house down where the people were. The second group stayed initially.
Yeah.
They did a lot of. They messed with them a lot to keep them thinking, because they weren't. They were just slowly deteriorating, and then there was this whole, the dynamics didn't always work so well, but they said there was too big of an area to defend. They probably should have burned down some of the other houses on their own to clear a line of defense, because people were sneaking up on them.
You're right. It was so big. It was time to. They really should have either dismantled the houses and used the materials for whatever they could use them for. But dismantle most of that place. Maybe even pull up the fence if they possibly could.
Yeah.
And close it in, if they had the calories to burn on an operation.
They would build their things so far away from things, and it's like, dude, you guys are a security nightmare, So that's why they kept getting screwed with and kidnapped. The third wave of people they brought in was this guy from the 7th episode. So he was only in for 3 episodes. It was
Ticknor.
Tick. Body language instructor, personal security specialist, and security expert who's a former reconnaissance Marine and sniper. You know, so they threw again an expert in there. But the thing that was great about it, they showed him. He was watching them from like weeks in. Yeah, he was there the whole time. You saw him like the camera, like the TV cameras would show a guy in the bushes, binoculars, just watching them and observing them. And I'm like, you know what? They're fucking with them because there's somebody been watching them the entire time. The entire time, they never even knew it. They even had one thing where
now did he explain? Because I didn't see the episodes that he was in. I just read about him. Did they get around to explaining how he fed himself? Now, as Marine Recon, and he's been trained to drink patty water and eat bugs. So my presumption was he's just out there eating cold rat meat, waiting for his chance to show up. I mean, he could have survived on whatever was in the environment. Did they ever explain?
Not really, but he showed him like he had meat he was eating and stuff like that. Like he was catching food, things like that. But there's this one point where the people who were screwing with them, like one of the groups, there's this guy. You see the camera, you see everybody's just out in the yard working. This guy walks into the compound out of the bushes, walks right up next to the house where 2 people are 10 feet from the guy. He takes a piece of paper and a knife. Boom! Jams in the wood. Walks back into the woods, and they don't see him until he disappears into the forest. And this was like that guy. He left them a note, and just to show that they were, and they're for something. Hey, somebody's here, and they're like, wait a minute, what's this? This guy walked in here, nobody saw him. These guys, these people were so unobservant. But again, it's hard to take that serious because you're in a game show. I mean, if they were really in an apocalyptic situation, would they really be like that? Maybe.
No, they wouldn't.
Maybe they would be. Maybe they're in such denial, because they kept on worrying about, superfluous stuff.
Yeah. The environment is always going to be artificial because there's no real danger.
Yeah.
There's no real danger. You're in a LARP. You're in a live-action role-playing game.
Exactly, but at least they started to make some weapons and clubs and spears and shields. And I did like with this episode that they actually gave the bad guys some weaponry to use against them. They had pepper spray, so they did really screw with them. They couldn't give them firearms, but you know what?
Or even weapons. They can't have them swinging on each other.
They gave them pepper spray. They sprayed them down and took their shit and they screwed them. Not to be like, wow, is there such an abundance of pepper spray that everybody would have that as a weapon? Again, no guns, but
my thought is it's unsafe at any speed, but my thought is paint pellets.
Yeah.
If you want to make this thing, and certainly if they're shooting at the guys outside the compound, those guys can be armored up with all their paint pellet gun armor and be protected.
Well, let's talk to Mac McLaughlin and let's set up our own reality.
Yeah, that would be the guy to consult. That is our go-to guy for all things paint pellet.
Yes.
Hi, Mac.
Because he sets those things up in Florida all the time. I'm eventually gonna call Mac one of these days. I want to check out one of these things he does. I really do, because he sets them up in these. Because I don't know what he does for a living, but I think he does some kind of. He works with the military and police. He's some advisor. I don't know what he does, but he always gets access to like these, their training areas, and he sets up these scenarios, these wasteland scenarios from like Fallout or Russian invasions and shit like that. It's crazy what he does.
Using their Hogan's Alley or using their shootout village to do a paint pellet war. It's impressive stuff. It really is.
So we'll do that. But this show. A little bit better in that respect, and it was just funny that the security guy comes in and is like, oh, you guys got all this wrong, and changes and makes raids and does this and does that.
Yeah, they actually go and screw and steal their food back. That's what I loved, is that once he's in there, like, let's go get our food back from the guys who took it.
Yep.
And they go and do that. What was the thing where the the viral outbreak guys come and take people away.
Let me tell you about that. Was by the way, people. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
But
Yeah.
As we said before, it's an implied that if you don't know, if you've watched this show once, you know that it's a perpetual spoiler alert.
Yeah.
The Vorpa people finally come. They're like, listen, we're your only hope. We have room for two. Where you have a permanent settlement, we're going to take two of you. Who's coming? And, they really, so they're like, no, because they like built this big scapegoat and they're ready to leave. And they're like, I don't want to go, I want to go. And they're like, they talk, the leader goes back to the group, the main group, and they're like, well, does anybody want to go? And immediately there's the one person, the teacher, she's like, okay, I'll go, let me get my stuff. Boom. She didn't even hesitate to say, fuck y'all, I'm out of here. She would be a turncoat in a second if the bad guys came in and said, like in Red Dawn, it's like, I was like, well, I went back into town and, they made me swallow the thing and,
Yeah, okay. So what was her job? Which one was it?
She was the teacher. She was the
anatomy instructor? Because what I got is model, carpenter, auto mechanic.
Geology professor.
Geology professor. Okay, so Miss Proctor bailed immediately.
Didn't even think about it. A second. And she was the only one who left. I mean, again, it's TV,
Yeah.
But she didn't even think about it, and that just shows you a lot about the character. She would probably turn like that, she has her pilot's license. She loves math and science,
And apparently not the people she's with.
Yeah. So that was interesting how she just.
But you're right. Well, there are people who aren't gonna leave because they know it's a show and they know that this isn't their so-called last chance. If it's a real last chance, there could be fucking knife fights over who gets a space on the lifeboat.
Oh yeah. But there was the one character. Now I don't. Again, how much of it was staged? How much of it was that he was really going off the reservation? Who was the guy? It was Jim Armistead, carpenter by trade, and is a general outdoorsman with an interest in disaster preparedness. His expertise is in water filtration, animal trapping, self-defense, and shelter creation. So he was the guy who had he was the prepper of the group, Yeah, and he helped them with the making water filtration systems and this and that. But he was fucking losing it. Now again, I don't know how much it was an act, but there were things like he was like crouching in the corner eating at the end where the trucks came. He was like, he got away from everybody. He like backed into like he was like out in the cornfields, when the Vorpa people came on, nothing to do with him. And
his paranoia was on full speed.
Yeah, I think he maybe really been losing it because being immersed in that environment, people are gonna tend to the reality is gonna be a little bit blurry, I think. But he was like in the cornfield, and he captured a lizard, ripped its head off, started eating it. It's like, okay, so how much of this was staged? How much of it wasn't? But if it wasn't staged, boy, he really lost it. But he said the most interesting thing, which we talked about earlier, was because he's a preparedness goes, you know what? No matter how much you prepare for all these disasters, it ain't going to work. Okay? He's like, spend your time, if you have loved ones, a wife and kids and a family, spend your time with them because when the disaster really comes, you're not going to have that time anymore. Which I thought was interesting from the frickin' preparedness guy who thought he was going to survive the apocalypse. He's like, you know what? It ain't going to work.
Yeah.
Use your time wisely.
Yeah, that was both chilling and sort of inspirational. That in some cases you're robbing your family and yourself of that time by obsessing about this stuff. Which I guess means we move on now to the people who are the full-time obsessive
wackos.
Who a rather interesting cavalcade of lunatics on Doomsday Preppers.
Yes.
Yeah. Three seasons of Doomsday Preppers.
I have not been able to watch any of this show because I don't have Netflix anymore, and it's not on Amazon Prime for free, and it's I don't think it's on Comcast
You'll find a lot of it. You'll find a lot of it on YouTube.
that's you're right. I never think to go to YouTube because I'm a bit of a quality snob, and I want to watch it on a big TV. So I never think to watch shit on YouTube. I'm sorry.
This from the man who came to stay at my house temporarily, and rather than play games on my shitty TV, went out and bought a fucking plasma TV and said, "There," just threw it down in my living room. I cannot be playing on this washed out vacuum tube TV.
It was a Christmas present.
Yeah, to you, because you were like.
Well, who's got the most use out of it?
That's a good point. Clearly, you left it behind, and I scavenged it.
Well, yeah, because folks, he had an Xbox, and he had a 19-inch tube TV, and I'm like, how the fuck are you playing games on this fucking thing? And
yeah, it's funny, and I totally poo-pooed it. I'm all like, oh, come on, Jared. He put that new TV set in, and I basically turned it on and went, well, I got to start Fallout 3 over again because I've missed half the game.
Yep.
I have missed half the freaking game because I couldn't see it on my shitty TV set, so I just had to start over.
Yeah, because then I think that same year it was like for Christmas a box showed up from Best Buy.
Yeah. So
anyway,
Doomsday Preppers. I have seen a couple of episodes, and the one I am most amused by, of course, is the season 3 episode that they're not allowed to show anymore.
What, the Washington local?
Yeah, because they ain't showing anymore because there are certain legal issues that are part of it, and that is, and let's just get ourselves tucked right into those legal issues. Tyler Smith shows up on the show to explain that his plan for the apocalypse is to steal all my stuff. That he literally has this group of people that he supposedly put together. At least they were willing to stand with him, for publicity shots on the show. And he and his big wobbly belly, got on the show and explained how, he was going to be the Lord Humongous. He was going to be the warlord of the wasteland. His doomsday plan was to steal all our stuff. Sadly, he discussed his plans for armed robbery while holding some firearms and shooting firearms to the cameras. And, oops, it turns out he's a convicted felon.
We never said that these people were the brightest.
Yeah. So, he's a convicted felon. He had messed up his probation, having moved, so he was already in trouble. Having not notified the local sheriff's department. And apparently, he had made such a problem of himself in his general day-to-day life with his own neighbors that they went and took the videotape of the show and took it to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department didn't see it. The neighbors report is my understanding of the events, and maybe I'm wrong.
That's right. That's I think I read as well.
And they just went and picked his ass up. Boom, he's back in jail. Hooray! Or at least he's out on bond. I don't know. But yes, Mr. Tyler Smith, genius, super genius. And I'm not even going to go into some. Well, you know what? I guess I could go into what his original charges were that he's convicted of because, it's public record. It's not an allegation. It's been proved. It's what he was. What was it, Jared?
Was it like inappropriate dialogue with a minor or something like that?
Yes. Lewd conduct, converse, or communications with a minor for immoral purposes. So
that's right, for immoral purposes. I forgot about that.
Trolling for underage kids on the interwebs is what I presume that means, or And I'm like.
Well, underage could be 17. You don't know.
That's right. But I'm gonna assume
it's not.
I'm gonna assume the worst because I'm bad. I'm a bad person.
And you know what? You know what? You're probably not far off.
Yeah. So part of me having seen that one episode because I had to, not the least of which because a friend of ours, Jared, who lives in Olympia, had suggested that perhaps it was vaguely that they were one of the neighbors. Our artist friend from Olympia, rather than name any names.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Somebody who is always at the film fest.
That would be the person.
Somebody who on fire.
Yeah, well, somebody who has a shotgun and would have been willing to bloat a hole through Mr. Tyler Smith if they'd ever come to their house looking for supplies.
And they would be justified, and they would do it. So.
Yeah. They're apparently one of the neighbors, and they were apparently, sort of the first person to bring it to my attention that this idiot was going to jail for this.
Nice.
But
so
anyway,
let's wrap. We're after 10, so
let's go.
So let's wrap up Doomsday Preppers. We didn't.
There are some good shows. I've seen one or two episodes. There are some shows where I'll see some guys doing some genuinely smart things to prepare for a genuine, actual, specific disaster, like the guy in coastal Alaska who's worried about a tsunami. Well, if you're living in coastal Alaska on the Pacific Rim, this is on your menu, right? Yeah. I get that.
Somebody lives in Florida could be preparing for hurricane disaster.
Exactly. Or an earthquake. That all makes sense. But the guy who is preparing for the day that terrorists take over his small town, which was one of the ones I saw, and I'm just like, really? A bunch of guys in black turbans and AK-47s are just going to stroll into your town like it's Red Dawn? Except, since it's Islam, I guess it would be Green Dawn. That's really your plan. That's the threat you're worried about.
Yeah, well, I mean, because you've had these survivalist types around for a very long time. A lot of them...
Since we had a bomb.
So a lot of them are... it was very underground, very not out in the public with media now. But now you got all these people, and I think a lot of these people are just a lot of it's a freaking dog and pony show. A lot of smoke and mirrors, like, oh, look what we're doing, we're this and we're that. They're all a bunch of crazy lunatic types. I think a lot of them,
or attention seekers. They're no different than anyone else who shows up in any other
reality show.
Bingo.
Exactly. Now, some of them actually have some real good ideas, because, even I forget what organization it was starting doing all these things for zombie survival preparedness, and they use it. It's like, well, we're not really. It was a government agency. They're like,
oh, that's right. Yes, you're right. FEMA. Was either FEMA or the CDC.
They're like, yeah, we don't really think there's going to be a zombie apocalypse, but you know what? This is actually teaching people about disaster preparedness, which everybody should know something about. And if it's a vehicle that'll work and get them to pay attention, then so be it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that really made sense. I saw that and I thought, good, my tax dollars at work. I'm okay with this.
Yeah, so teaching people how to be disaster preparedness in Florida, absolutely, especially down where I'm at. Andrew, Wilma. When Wilma in 2005, my power was out for a week.
Holy crap! I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it was 5 days. It was 2 days on, 2 days off, 1 day on, then 2 days off again. Then it was back on in my area. So there was a lot of cold showers and a lot of barbecuing.
So for a week,
yep.
You had 5 days off and 2 days on of power.
No, it was 2 days on, 2 days off, 1 day on, 2 days off. It was 5 days.
Okay.
Now, we had people, driving up like 2 hours up north to get fuel, and the whole building, because this is when I was at my mother's, and I was staying there for a little while, helping her out. I've had my own little disaster, scenario. I didn't even realize it until we started talking about it. So, canned goods, not using the fridge. Actually, one of these people had a generator, like anything that was cold, like the whole building kind of. It was like there was like 10 townhomes there. We all kind of pulled together, things that were cold. We kept in their house in their refrigerator because they had the generator going, and then somebody else would get gas. We'd all be outside at night barbecuing, cooking the food. So we all kind of got along real nice for about 5 days. But you know what? If I would have went to 10 days, 3 weeks, I wonder how nice and cuddly everybody would have been, kind of working together. Since it's only about a week, it was fine. Especially since it wasn't the whole world. We could go a couple hours north, get a hotel, get food, get gas.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it was sleeping in the dark, and people every night we are all sitting outside, and
Frankly, that's like good. That's really just welcome to the third world. There's people who live in those conditions.
every single day.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, well, to us, it's alien in the first world. So, yeah. So these doomsday preppers, is a lot of it's bullshit, attention seekers, but some people might actually have some decent ideas. I was like, well, I'm in an area where I really could have some real disaster problems. So this is how I'm preparing for it. So there's some sense that's made in there.
And some of the people they had were just guys like I keep remembering a guy who was just living off the grid. Who was a guy with he and his daughters. They're not in school. He's all this back to nature stuff. He's got this log cabin. He's making his own food. He's raising animals. He's making cheese. He's living like a medieval peasant. Right?
Yeah, he's just living off the land. He's like living like it was like 1860. He's just living on a farm.
Yeah.
Just
And he's not exactly prepping for doomsday, but he certainly has put himself in a position where if the lights, power, internet, and Google go off, he's not going to give a shit.
Yeah, he already knows how to live. So yeah, so those kind of people. There's people who do that. Like again, like we always say, look at the Amish. We've talked about them. They're going to do great. They're going to do fantastic. Before we wrap up, two quick shows I want to mention. There was a show I haven't had a chance to see it because it's again not. I guess I'd have to go on YouTube. It was another one of these reality wackos looking for attention. Doomsday Castle.
Oh, okay. Don't know it.
Guy has this castle and he's got his whole family involved. I'm like, look, we're preparing for the apocalypse, and I bought this castle and we're preparing for it and building self-defense and shit like that. Again, just attention seekers, trying to find something. And then of course there's the pilot for.
Oh yeah.
Can I see that there? Apocalypse Man.
Yeah.
Apocalypse Man, which is what's the guy's name? It is former Marine and martial artist Rudy. Was it Rudy Reyes?
Yeah. Yeah. Who I should note plays himself in Generation Kill.
That's right.
If you've ever seen the HBO series Generation Kill, he plays himself, and there's a point where the actors playing his fellow Marines give him a bunch of shit about how he wants to go to Hollywood and be an actor.
Because that's what he does. Because he really.
That's what he does. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So he did this show, and actually it was filmed in Detroit because there's a lot of apocalyptic.
Wow. Yeah. Because we don't have Chernobyl.
We got Detroit. all I could think of is from Kentucky Fried Movie. Send him to Detroit.
Yeah. No! Oh man, it's either that or East St. Louis. I guess.
Yeah. So Apocalypse Man, it's an hour-long pilot. He's like, listen, the world falls apart. This is how you survive. He does these things like crossing bridges with rope. He like a crowbar and some rope, and he makes an impromptu grappling hook and climbs across the bridge and stuff. And I'm like, well, my fat ass ain't doing that. He talks about security, if you're going to sleep somewhere, how to look for food, how to prepare, how to start fires with steel wool and batteries, and how to find a car and get it started. So he does all this thing like how do you survive on in the urban environment, kind of thing. And it never went anywhere. I mean, it might have been interesting to see where it went, but it was only a 1-hour pilot. So
I'll admit I have not tried the steel wool and batteries yet, but I'm dying to. It was just a 9-volt battery, and boom, it automatically it immediately ignited the steel wool, which made for decent kindling.
Yeah, but even he said, he's like, well, this is great for now, but it's going to run out.
Yeah.
You're going to run out of batteries. You're going to run out of steel wool. So.
Oh, yeah, exactly. My worry is the batteries sitting on the shelves what's their half-life? I mean, what's the life of a battery just sitting in the store?
Yeah.
So
his was, fairly interesting to see that in that environment, to see him crawling around and stuff like that. So. All right, folks. So that was our show on reality apocalypse TV. Some of it being set up scenario, some of it being people getting ready for the apocalypse, and some of it being more of like what's going to happen in the world. The documentary Life After People.
Life After People is essential for anyone who's like thinking about writing some apocalypse material.
Oh yeah.
And wants to know how far in the future is the Empire State Building still going to be recognizable.
Yeah.
Or even cities be recognizable, as opposed to being overgrown or
when there might be people around, but there's not enough people to keep the infrastructure going.
Yeah, yeah. So that's indispensable for anyone who's ever thought about writing about the post-apocalypse. I would recommend that to anyone.
Because people who are left in the city aren't worrying about keeping the buses going or sweeping the floors. They're worrying about how am I going to eat.
Yeah, they're not worried about that. Keep the pumps going in the subways. That was one of my favorite things in Twilight 2000's Armies of the Night, which is about going on an expedition into Manhattan, and Manhattan becomes literally like an urban jungle in the scenario. One of the great things I loved was everyone is getting water from the subways.
Ugh.
That's where people go to spool out the water that they're going to go boil and filter later, if they don't have a catch system. Is that they're like oases in this concrete desert, which means they're also the sites of a lot of bloody fighting.
Oh, I'm sure, because it's the water hole, so that's where people are going to be going.
Yeah, yep.
So folks, that's our show on reality TV. Haven't even thought about what we're going to do next in 2 weeks. Me and Mr. Glancy will discuss it during the week, and we'll figure out what we're going to do. I don't know. I still want to talk about fashion in the apocalypse, but we're going to need to wrap.
I don't see why that can't be the next one.
But I think it's going to need to encompass more than that, because I don't think we. Well, here I say, there's no way we could talk about that for an hour. Bullshit. But
have you heard us? Blah blah blah. Blah.
Have you ever watched the show? Have you ever talked to us in real life?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Have you still got ears on your head, or did we talk the fuckers right off your skull? Yeah.
We might have. We might have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, just because I mentioned it, I saw they posted the Necronomicon for 2015, the Providence show.
Good.
Same time as last year, but what's fortunate, Gen Con that in 2015 is July 30th to the 2nd.
Oh, thank goodness.
So there is like a 2.5 week buffer in between, so I think I'll be able to pull it off, because I could come back to work Tuesday, have a 4-day work week, work the entire next week, and work a couple days that week. My boss won't have a fucking shit fit, so I could probably do both of them in 2015.
Good. We missed you. We missed you last year. It was no good not seeing you at Necronomicon. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I heard they do. Anyway, people don't care about that. I just thought I mentioned it.
No, they don't. But if we can unless we can find a way to do a Lovecraftian apocalypse, we
could talk to Mr. Craig Mullins and about his Reanimated States of America, which is like a post-apocalyptic novel, like graphic novel he just did with kind of Herbert West, and it's like apocalypse. I don't know much about it. I remember him mentioning it to me in the past.
And certainly, I have actually run across a number of there's short stories in Book of Cthulhu and in something called Reign of Cthulhu, which are all stories set after humanity has been taken down a peg or two with the return of the great old ones. I'm not sure if that counts as a monster apocalypse or a supernatural apocalypse, but it's in there somewhere.
Both.
All right.
So next week, again, we might talk about fashion, the apocalypse, maybe a couple of other little side trends, like Mr.
What is the well-groomed wastelander wearing?
Mr. Thrasher mentioned about scavenging and other things like that. So there's some other interesting little topics we could talk about, or maybe we'll circle around and maybe talk about a book or something. I don't know.
That's right. It's not like our shelves are not filled with things we could choose from in that department.
I know. Our book cup overfloweth. So as I know, as we know, you'll know. So probably you'll know Monday.
All right.
They'll know Monday. Well, we'll talk about it hard then. But anyway, so for Adam Blank Glancy, or are we going with the bomb, the atom? I'm the
Adam the bomb Glancy. Yeah, that's what we're gonna go with.
So with Adam the bomb Glancy, and not because he has digestive issues, folks. Okay?
No. Not much. Not
much. Not much, lately. So for Adam the Bomb Glancy and Jared Apocalypse Nerd Wallace, signing off for Podcast Jack Round Zero. We will see you folks in 2 weeks. Thank you and good night.
Good night.